Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Crunching Your Growth. I'm Phil Masiello, and today I've got a returning guest who lives right at the intersection of strategy, systems, and real entrepreneurial freedom. Jeremy Shapiro, a serial entrepreneur, mentor, a mastermind builder who spent more than 2 decades helping business owners make the critical leap from solopreneur to true business owner. And that subtle shift that determines whether you own the business or the business owns you. And I love that statement. He founded Bay Area Mastermind. You could look it up and see what that's all about. He's back on the show. He was on the show once before, and we had a great conversation. But he's back on the show because he just wrote a really great book called Your Business Growth Playbook: Breakthrough Strategies to Scale Your Business for Business Owners Who've Outgrown the Hustle. And I think that's important because he does a lot. He has his mastermind. He has a business. He coaches. I'm sure he hears all the time that the thing people want to know is, how do I scale my business? How do I scale my business? And I hear it all the time. So I think it was important to come on after writing this book, because in it he lays out 3 big levers that any established business can pull to break through plateaus, grow profitably, stop confusing working harder with growing smarter. So today we're going to talk about what to do when the hustle that got you there stops working. And this always happens. We'll get into this, but it always happens to entrepreneurs, right? You always hit plateaus. So we'll dig into those 3 levers: the mindset shift from doing everything yourself to leading an actual business, and how to design growth that doesn't cost you your life in the process. So let's bring him in and let's hear what he's got to say. And Jeremy, welcome back. Thanks for taking the time to come on, and congratulations on the new book.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the invite, and it's always so great to chat with you and tune into the show live as well.
Yeah, thank you. It's great. So why don't we start off? Just give us a rough background for the people who didn't see you on the first show. A little rough background of what you've done, and then leading up to where we are today.
Yeah, so I've been a serial entrepreneur my entire career. My first, what I consider real business, started back in my high school days. And when I say real business, I mean I had not just multiple clients, but multiple team members supporting me in the business as well. And over that time period, every single one of my businesses, Phil, has been in the service of fellow entrepreneurs. And when we work with business owners, one of the big goals is to help them move towards what I call entrepreneurial freedom. Mm-hmm. And all my businesses have helped our business owners to get there.
So, So what types of businesses are you talking about that support entrepreneurs? Are we talking about like coaching businesses? Are we talking about, the mastermind?
Yeah, so this has come in the form of a number of businesses. I've had, education and data businesses over the years. I've certainly done my fair share of coaching, consulting, and working with groups in the form of masterminds and so forth. I've also had a number of software as a service businesses that provide platforms for companies that free the business owners up from a lot of the work in the business. So that way they have more time to focus on their business. A really important distinction a lot of newer business owners don't always see.
Oh, yeah. We deal with it all the time. I'll give you a quick example. And I think that this is probably going to play into your book in a way. We had a client that hired us on the Crunch Growth side because they came to us. Well, we've been through 4 agencies and we have a problem with we can't get past. We went from 0 to 20 million, and it took us about 5 years, but then we've been stuck at this 20 million point, and we have a problem with advertising and marketing. And whenever I hear that we've been through like 4 agencies, 5 agencies, it's always a cautionary tale for me. And then I started to delve into the business, and they had a brand, a product that they were selling, because it was a food product, but they also sold wholesale, and they were importing, and it was a great business, but they shot from 0 to 20, and they couldn't get past it. And they hired this guy to handle the wholesale side of it. And I knew this guy from the food industry, and this guy was a powerhouse. I mean, this guy was an A++ player. He should have been moving the needle. And that was a cautionary flag. So I said to the owner, before we get together, I'm going to put my Phil coaching hat on. Would you be open to doing a 2-day offsite so we can get to the bottom of what's really happening? And he agreed, and we set it up. And we started at 8. By 10 in the morning, I uncovered the problem, because I said to the A++ player, why do you think you can't get past, 20 million. He said, it's very simple. He said, he wants to be on every single sales call. And so therefore, I am bound by his schedule, not by the prospect schedule, but by his schedule. And so he's running marketing operations, finance, importing. He's running the warehouse. He's doing everything. And so I can't get my job done. And I said to him, does that make sense to you? You're running a $20 million a year business. You should be on this level managing the people. You're trying to manage everything in the business. And it took us the rest of the 2 days to get him to agree and show him that that was bad for the business. And when he finally agreed, literally the A++ player doubled his sales in 18 months, doubled the sales in 18 months. And
Huge.
they had orders for that would double the sales. So, that whole point that you just made about working in the business versus working on the business is a bottleneck that we see all the time.
It's funny because sometimes we choose to scale as a decision of our own, right? In this case, with your client, they wanted to grow. And the outcome of that was getting the business owner to step back so this A++ player could go get it. Other times, circumstances force us to change and grow. One of my clients I've interviewed before and shared his story had a situation where in his business, he also was very much present for the sales calls, right?
Yeah.
Was present at the job site to get his guys signed on every single day and working on the job site, was there to write up estimates and do everything. And at a certain point, there was the unfortunate incident where he was on the job site talking to a client when suddenly one of the guys shouts out and there's a truck rolling down the hill towards him with one of those bobcats on the back. He looks up in time to see this truck hit him, run him over, and drag his body down the road. And so he comes to in the ICU, broken bones, punctured organs, blood loss, like all of it, like really awful situation. And he's laid up there.
Yeah.
So he's suddenly faced with this decision of, do I shut the business down?
Right.
Because I can't be there every second of the day. Do I create systems? Do I hire? Like, what do I do? And so while he's physically stuck in the ICU, he realizes that to keep the business going, he's got to hire someone to handle sales, someone to go out there and make sure the team gets on the job site every day. And so he was able to use technology to do a piece of that. And so by bringing in systems, software, and people, he suddenly found he had a business that was running far more profitably and doing far better with him less involved. He did two interesting things, right? He has this really great equation he looks at for how much does he get out of the business as a benefit by being the owner,
right,
compared to how much time he puts into the business.
right.
Right. So this is classic, numerator or denominator, adjust either number, it improves the outcome. And so suddenly he was putting in less hours in the business and he was doing some smart things to increase the revenue and profitability. And so his ROI for being the business owner shot through the roof simply because of a really, really bad situation, which we'd never wish on anyone. But the
Right.
outcome was he now had systems and team members in a business that ran far better without him in it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. We see it all the time. Entrepreneurs, the startup guys, the founders, they can become the bottleneck. And I be honest with you, and I don't know if I told you this story on our first call, but I learned that the hard way on my first business. I founded a business and it was a total disaster. And it was a total disaster for that very reason. It was a failure of leadership, a failure of process management. I tried to do everything. I thought, hey, I'm the entrepreneur. I have all the answers. And the business itself was good. It was running. It was generating cash. It was busy. It was a retail store. But the way it operated was pathetic. And I feel sorry for the people who worked for me at that point in time because I'm sure they were miserable coming to work every day.
How many business owners have you worked with, Phil, where, if they're not physically there at the business isn't running, right? They've got to turn that sign from open to closed or put a sign up on the door if they're stepping out or they want to go on a vacation, if they could even imagine that. Right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be that way.
Absolutely not. And some entrepreneurs think they have to do that in the beginning. They think that that's part of the game. And I keep saying it's not part of the game. You can actually set up a system, set up a business with systems and processes and manage people to run the business, whether you're there or not, because you may have to, in my business, there's things I have to do. There's places I have to go. Maybe I'm going to speak somewhere. Maybe I'm going to meet a client and I'm going to be on a plane for 2 days or whatever it is. The business still has to run. And so I think the key to some of that is, somebody told me the other day that hiring the right team is sometimes harder than building the business itself.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you think about who's actually going to be running the business for you. That's a pretty critical hire,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So we can either hope we get the magical unicorn hire that just figures it out, or we have good systems that the right hire can use. Right?
Exactly.
But you rarely are going to find that former. It's far more common you get the latter, the right system and the right person.
Yeah.
But now, Phil, you've exited your business you've exited multiple businesses and helped clients do the same.
Yeah.
I think it's funny that when we talk with business owners, so often they don't realize that longer term, their businesses can only go one of three directions, right? What's most common is the business just shuts down,
Right.
right? You run it to the ground, you close up shop, and that's that. That's where most businesses go.
Right.
Very rarely do you have a generational business where you pass it on to your kids,
Yeah.
especially nowadays. Like that is so uncommon. It happens, but it's really rare. Which leaves us with the third option, which is you exit, like
Right.
you've done, like our clients have done. And so when you start thinking about where your business is going, what it takes to exit, if you have an owner-operated business that only runs by you working, 60, 80 hours a week in the business, that is a far less attractive business to sell
Right.
than a business that can run without you
Right.
actively in the business. So it behooves us to set up our business in a way that we can get a higher valuation and have more prospective buyers because we're not involved, than to create a glorified job for ourselves.
100%. 100%. There's a friend of mine, Vern Harnish, who wrote the
Scaling Up.
Rockefeller Habits and Scaling Up.
Mhm.
And he's been on the show, and he said, when you set up your business, you should always set up your business to exit, no matter what you're doing. Maybe you want to sell it to your grandson or your nephew or your aunt or your uncle or whatever, but you should always set it up from the beginning as if you plan to sell it. He said, and that does two things. One, it forces you into setting up systems and processes. But he said the second thing is that it stops you from the business becoming your whole identity.
Yeah.
So because that's another dangerous point, is when the business becomes your identity.
Yeah, it's wise advice. And those are both great books I've read and recommend. And there's an exercise I actually love doing with clients where we write out the org chart for the business.
Yeah.
Right? This doesn't need to be some future paced, dream plan of what the company will look like, but just the roles you currently have in your company. And as you do this, you then put the name of the person in your team who's doing that role in the box. Now, look, as a solopreneur, it's going to be your name in all those boxes. Maybe you have a small team and people wear a few hats. So you have, Susie's name is in 6 boxes and Bob's name is in 4 boxes. That's fine. But you're at least figuring out what the roles in the company are. So now you can create the systems for those roles.
Yeah.
So now you can hire team members to take on some of those roles. And the more of those boxes you can get your name out of and put someone else's name into, the more the business can run without you. And the more you can focus on growing the business, selling the business, doing other things outside of the business. It frees you up rather than having your name in all those boxes.
Yeah. I was talking to a guy a couple of weeks ago who started a business, but he essentially has several groups that he's outsourcing all these pieces to. So he's a solopreneur, but he's more of he's a time allocator, right? Because now he's just allocating process and time to all these people that he's worked with for years that are independent of him, that he needs at different times, but they're not on the payroll. So it's easier for him to sort of manage the business that way. And he's perfectly happy doing it.
When we look at the different roles in the company, right, sometimes these are things we'll decide we just aren't going to do, right? We get rid of the role. Other times we do it ourselves. Sometimes we hire for the role in terms of an employee who takes on the responsibility. Other times we'll outsource to an individual, whether it be a contractor, a freelancer, and so forth.
Yeah.
And other times we bring on an agency or a company to fulfill that. There are many ways to accomplish a task in the business. They don't all need to be employees, and they certainly should not all be you as the business owner.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. You can't do it all. I mean, it's too taxing. I've tried.
You can. It's just not a great plan.
Well,
We've seen how that goes.
I don't know it gets taxing. You never do anything well that way. It sort of becomes you're just trying to fill in gaps all the time. So,
Well,
yeah,
as a teenager, I mean, this is 30 years ago. I hired a bookkeeper as one of my earlier hires. Right, this was not an employee. This was a bookkeeping company to handle all that ongoing work.
yeah,
Right, and so the last time that I dealt with writing the checks or balancing the checkbook or doing sort of the day-to-day work of the bookkeeping was decades ago. Now, you still very much have your finger on the pulse of what's going on and you have controls in place and all the rest of that, but
sure,
it removes you even from, at the time, I was a solopreneur working only a handful of hours a week, but it removed that task. I had another client I was working with recently, and he was a solopreneur. One of the challenges was he loved getting out to the great outdoors. He was a mountain biker.
right. Oh yeah,
This is good for his physical health, his mental health, his wellness, all the things. But the downside to being in the mountains is there's not great cell phone coverage,
yeah,
which meant his customers couldn't reach him. And if there was a problem and there was an urgent need, which did come up in his line of work, he felt, rightfully so, he needed to be there to support his customers. And that is a good thing to make sure your customers and clients are taken care of.
yeah,
But it didn't need to be him. So one of the first things we worked on was bringing on a support person to cover that front line. 40 hours a week, normal business hours. He had someone outsourced as a freelancer handling the inbound phone calls, text messages, emails, and so forth. So the customers could get someone to start getting help right away, even if he was out of the office in the mountains. But more realistically, what do you do with those 40 hours a week? You reinvest it in the business. So he was
yeah,
getting out there on sales calls, doing product development, doing all the things he needed to do to grow the business that he wasn't able to do when he was so focused on being there on the front lines with every single customer phone call, email, and so forth.
yeah.
So oftentimes for a small business, hiring a frontline support person instantly can free up a ton of your time.
Sure. Even if they're a virtual assistant, however you
Oftentimes,
do
if
it.
they're
Yeah.
virtual.
Yeah, however you do it. I mean, there's a million options today to do things, and certainly technology also plays a role in some of
Yeah.
that. So, especially with AI and chatbots and things like that are available to us. So,
So long as we're still serving the customer, yes.
yeah, yeah, exactly. As long as the customer's happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get to the book and let's talk about the book, why you wrote it, and what the three levers are. I'm interested.
So as I've been working with clients over the years, I would always come back to the similar playbook when the challenge came up of a business owner feeling stuck, right? A lot of us, once our business gets going, we've experienced some growth, and that's exciting as a business owner. At some point, though, what got you to where you are now stops getting you to where you want to go.
Right.
And that's when we start hustling harder, putting in more time, beating that same drum, trying the same thing, and just not moving the needle as much as it used to. I've seen this in my own businesses over the years, and a ton of my clients see this before they find me. So I would go back to my same playbook I had up here in my head to solve this, to fix this and get the business owners back to growth. And so the whole start behind this book was this framework that I'd use again and again in the same playbook of strategies, simply codifying it and putting it into a book that any business owner can pick up. It's broken down to 3 sections, one for each of those 3 main levers we have in the equation, F, A, and Q. And so all you do is you flip open to, the section where you want to grow your business, pick the strategy that makes the most sense to implement right now, test that out, get your result, and you come back to the playbook. It's not a book you read cover to cover and put back on the shelf. It's a playbook you get to use again and again in your business to get back to growth.
Yeah, that's smart. That's smart because most books, you read it, you take it in, but there's not like a lot of actionable items.
I'm a tactical guy. Like as a reader, as an avid, you and I both avid business book readers, right? I've read so many books that get you excited. It gets you the what and the why. And so you're all bought in on the solution, but then the book leaves you hanging
Right.
without the tactical how. And that's the part that's always important to me. So when I find books that give me that tactical how, those are prized books because they can help me as the business owner make a change in my business. And so it was really my goal to provide that value to my readers that they could then take the book and implement and execute and get an answer, not needing me or someone else or some expert, but being able to do this on their own with that guidebook in hand.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's smart. So what are the levers?
So when we look at our business, there's a few simple formulas that really help us to know, right? One really valuable formula that's good for us business owners to have is understanding how to calculate our customer lifetime value, right? When we know what a customer is worth to us,
Right.
not from one transaction, but over their lifetime with us, that lets us do a few things, right? We can now start looking at profitability in the business because we know what it costs to acquire and service that customer.
Right.
We now can look at how much we spend to get a customer, because if there's value beyond that first transaction, we can spend more. But more importantly is, while most books focus on how to just get more customers, and you can take courses, go to conferences, read books, there are a million ways to find out how to get more customers. That's really only one piece of the equation.
Yeah.
Once we have a customer on board with us, what else can we do with them? How else do we increase that customer lifetime value? Well, when we look at it, the gross revenue in our business comes down to these three key pieces. One is, of course, how many customers we have. It also matters how much they spend with us when they spend with us. And it also matters how often they spend with us. If you have a services business where you take care of a customer one time, after they spent money with you, if that's it, well, now you got to go out and go hunting again and get another customer. What if instead we look at how to bring that customer back to spend more with you and get more value? And if we can look at playing with that transaction amount, so when they do spend with you, they spend more. And so that comes down to this 3Ps formula: increasing the frequency of transactions, the amount of each transaction, and of course that quantity piece. And so the whole rest of the book really is the playbook on how to increase each one of those F, A, and Q levers.
Yeah, that is, in my opinion, one of the most important metrics in e-commerce, but really any business. We focused on it in e-commerce for years, and it's amazing to me how few brands that are established, that are doing north of 10 million, focus on that number. And to me, that number tells you everything, because, you know, why spend money chasing a customer that you think is ideal when you have these customers that are spending money with you, and you're not taking care of them as well as you should? But more importantly, if you look at the profile of those customers, your long-term value, the customers with the highest long-term value, that's your profile of your best customer. And
Yeah.
and you can take that information and you can go out and get more of them. Too many times I hear people say, well, our ideal customer is, between the ages of 25 and 35. And, that's who we want to go after. And you say, well, if you look at your data, you find that your customer is really 35 to 47. And this is what the profile looks like. So let's get more of those. Well, no, we want the younger. Well, you're not getting them, but this is what you're getting. So why don't we just get more of them? So
for one of my businesses years ago, we did this really cool process that I've done many times since, and with clients as well, where we did a psychographic analysis of our list. So we broke down our prospects as well as our customers, knowing how much each customer spent with us and their predicted customer lifetime value. We broke them down into these super clusters as well as these individual psychographic profiles, right? A third-party company does this for us and provides the analysis back. And Phil, this is the coolest thing. We were able to see over and underrepresentation in our prospect list and our customer list based on the population. So what this told us was interesting things. For example, certain profiles, when they spend with us, they disproportionately spend far more than other profiles. However, our prospect list was underrepresented in those. So we were doing a poor job attracting them, but when we did, they did great. On the flip side, we had the low spenders, right? The ones who, if they did business, really did not spend a whole lot with us.
right.
And sometimes we look and see our prospect list was disproportionately high with those, meaning we were attracting prospects who weren't going to be good customers.
Right.
And so when you start to realize what those different subsets are within your customer and prospect list, you can adjust your marketing and sales material to better attract the ones you want, repel the ones you don't, and get more of the ones that are going to do really well with you. Now, that being said, there are so many ways to approach this, but if you don't know your customer and you don't know how much they spend, which, by the way, most business owners don't know that customer lifetime value,
Right.
right? Then how are you going to attract more of them, and how are you going to offer more value to them?
I'm thinking back, I'm smiling as you're saying this, because when we were in the shaving business, these young guys came to me and said, we have this new product, and it was called Windsor Circle, and it will tell you everything you ever want to know about your customer. It'll break it down, lifetime value. It'll give you your good prospects, your not so great ones. It'll tell you everything. And I was skeptical because they really didn't have any customers. It was sort of a new product, but we plugged it in, and it was amazing what the information that it gave back. And it was exactly what you're talking about, which is, and this was on the e-commerce side, looking at who was spending money, how much they were spending, who were you, what was the profile of your great customers, how many of those, if I took that profile, how many of those people existed in the United States, and how could we get to them? And that's exactly how we used it. We used it to say, okay, well, certainly we're going to nurture our best customers, right? We'll do that through email and all types of things. But the ability to say, no, this is the target of your greatest customer, and alter the marketing and advertising materials towards that, and find where those people were, whether they were online, whether they were on, social media, wherever they were, that changed the whole game for us. And it was amazing how it enabled us to be more efficient and effective with our advertising budget. Obviously, if you have $100 or $200 lifetime value or $300 lifetime value, you can afford to, spend $100 to get a customer, but that doesn't work if you don't know who that customer is. And you're, like you said, you're getting the low value people.
One thing I see, newer business owners often do is, as they're trying to figure out who their ideal customer is, they're looking for anyone. And if you've been to networking events, you've met these folks, right? I remember being at an event and I was talking to, he was a realtor, and I had asked him, as I'm trying to figure out his niche, what he specializes in. Like, do you work more on the buy side, the sell side? Are we talking commercial, residential, what neighborhood, what demographic, all these different things. And the answer kept coming back to, like, oh, I work with buyers and sellers in single families or 4 families or condos. It was one of these business, quote, business owners who worked with anyone and everyone.
Yeah.
That makes it really hard for me to refer business to him if he's a generalist.
Yeah.
Whereas the opposite is, if you think about, if you needed really important and urgent heart surgery, do you want to go to the doctor / vet / dentist who is a family practitioner and does anything and everything? Or do you want to go to the cardiac surgeon specializing in middle-aged males with this condition and so on and so forth, who is so dialed into the exact thing you need?
Right.
What we want is a specialist. And by the way, we as consumers will pay a lot more for the specialist who speaks our exact language.
Yeah.
And so the advice there for our listeners who don't have their narrow target audience dialed in is, the better you tighten that up, the more you'll attract your ideal prospect, the more you'll repel the prospects and customers you don't want. And more importantly, the higher you can raise your prices, because you are now a specialist for just that kind of customer. And that is typically pure profit.
Yeah. 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 It's amazing to me how many, again, how many brands and most of what we do is on the consumer product side. And that's sort of the way my mind thinks: e-commerce, consumer products, selling. And it's amazing how few brands have a profile. Mm-hmm. And when we were in the shaving business, people would say, oh, well, you're selling shaving to men and women, so you can capture everybody. But I used to say, no, our core customer is 25 to 40, because you're never going to convert a guy that's over 45 to a new razor. Or you're going to have a more difficult time because he's already set in his ways. He's been using the Gillette 3-blade or the 5-blade forever. And, same thing with women. And the guys under 25, they don't care about shaving yet. So I used to say, no, we know, we're dialed into who we're going for. Do we get outliers? Absolutely. Yeah. But are we going to target them? No, because it's just not worth it. I'm not going to target a 60-year-old guy who's using a Gillette Fusion and try and get him to convert. It's just not going to happen.
Well, that's the interesting thing too about niches, is as you specialize and dial in, right, you will attract those outliers less, but no one's saying you have to turn them down.
No.
If someone is still coming to you despite your marketing and they want to become a customer, that's not a bad thing, because you weren't trying to get them. That's a freebie customer that your cost for acquisition is actually pretty low because you weren't targeting them in the first place.
Exactly. Yeah.
But a lot of this also comes down to, like, this values-based pricing, and are you a commodity versus a unique player in the space? Like, even the clients, Phil, that you work with, If you think about the ones that come to you and they're just a commodity, another widget that there's a million of, how hard is it for them to find a new customer versus your clients who have a truly unique and innovative product with very little competition? They almost can make up whatever they charge.
Yeah, to be honest, we only work with brands. First of all, we don't work with sellers. And part of our intake is finding out what's different about you. Because if you're telling me that you're just better, you're selling popcorn and you have a better popcorn, I don't want to take the business because I can't make a difference. What am I going to say? The popcorn tastes better. Better is subjective. And so we turn down a lot of clients because of that, because a lot of people, but on the other side of it, we will offer the service to help you figure that out.
Yes.
But if you don't want it because you think you figured it out and you just say, well, look, I have a better so-and-so and I'm going to go after it. Okay, that's fine. We're not the group for you. I'll give them 10 other groups that'll do it. But it's just, we don't do it because we're not going to be successful. You're not going to be happy. And then we're just not, it's not going to go anywhere. If I have nothing to say about your product, if there's nothing unique to talk about, I can't advertise it. I can't market it. I can't help you.
It's harder to work with. One of the levers we were talking about that we cover in the book is, the amount of the transaction, right? So one of the ways you can adjust the amount of the transaction is relooking at your prices, especially for service-based businesses. Business owners very often forget to go back and adjust their pricing periodically. Yet we as consumers are so used to companies periodically, sometimes a few times a year, increasing their pricing on us. And the more niche we are and the more value-based our pricing is, the better. I had a client I was working with who, as a solopreneur, she had created a six-figure business that was a rather part-time business for her. Oh. And it was pretty good. She was doing other things, but this was this six-figure business on the side that produced with just her. And she was approached by somebody outside of the market who loved the business model and asked if they could hire her to teach them the entire business model. Basically a business in a box that overnight they'd have a six-figure business too. And so she came to me and she's asking me how to price this. And I'd known her and see the business grow and all the things she'd been working on. And she was looking at what her time was worth. And so she's thinking, okay, well, I got to fly out there. I'll be on site probably in a day. I can teach this to them. So maybe I charge like $1,000 for my time, but then I've got to cover my flights and travel and hotel. And I'm looking at her. I'm like, well, hang on. You're saying this person's going to get a business in a box done for them. They're going to learn from all your mistakes and everything you've done. You're providing huge value. You're shortening the time for them to get from idea to result by months to years and collapsing that down.
Absolutely.
That's worth something, isn't that? Why aren't we putting a zero on the end of that? Why aren't we saying that's $10,000 and they're covering all your expenses, right? Like, why don't we start there? Now, of course, 10xing your price is a rather uncomfortable mental exercise. So the first step is like practicing that in front of a mirror, getting comfortable saying those words without it, making you uncomfortable, tripping over your own words, right? And so that was the day I got the nickname, Jeremy add a zero Shapiro, because we were talking about putting a zero on the end there. And when she goes off and she pitches this thing and they say yes, which, by the way, tells you something. It tells you, first of all, you should have been charging that all along and you probably could have gone higher.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're not experimenting with your prices and you're not seeing what the market will bear, that's money you're leaving on the table every single day. And by the way, your cost of acquisition doesn't change. Your cost to fulfill doesn't change. You're simply looking at adjusting the price on the front end.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, when you think about it, the way that you just said it, you're essentially selling them your business. And if the business is doing, say, $100,000 a year and dropping whatever profit to the bottom line, let's say it's 20% or 25%, right? It's $25,000 a year. You're giving them a business worth $25,000 a year in income. So why not charge $20,000 or $10,000 or more?
Easy. Yeah. Well, and sometimes, like, especially if we look at like a recurring revenue business, right?
Yeah.
If we think about some simple numbers, and let's say you've got a subscription business and you charge $40 a month. Let's say all in your cost of goods to fulfill on that and run the business and everything else is $30 a month. Our $40 in income minus our 30 in expense gives us a profit of 10. All right. 40 minus 30 gives you your 10. If we go with a modest price increase of $40 a month to $50, as we are used to seeing as consumers all the time, right? That is only a small price increase to your consumer, yet for your profit, you've just doubled it from $10
Yeah.
to $20 a month per subscriber.
Yeah.
Right? Now, am I saying if you have a subscription business, you need to go out and tell all of your subscribers their prices have just gone up? You can do that, but a better way to test this out is simply A/B test your sales page, right? Send some of your traffic to a page that offers the alternate price you want to test. What people are so often surprised to see is that modest increase in price doesn't actually impact conversion at all. Sometimes we've actually even seen it increase conversion and close more customers by having a higher price point.
Yeah.
Either way, you've just doubled your profit. And more importantly is if you know that's the right price point, you can stop testing it and you can roll this out to all your prospects. And for sure, you can go to your existing customer base, because by doubling your profits, you can technically afford to lose about half of your subscribers and still make the same amount of money.
Yeah. Yeah. Pricing correctly is a science.
Yeah.
And you have to really pay attention to it. The other thing that I teach, again, especially on the consumer product side, is when you're faced with a situation like you are today, where we've got increased costs and nobody wants to raise their pricing because they're afraid, but you have to because the costs are going up. I always say the same thing. Think about what you can do to add value to the equation. Because if you just say, look, I sell this, this phone, and now it used to sell for 700, now it's going to sell for 800 because of cost increases. There's got to be something else you can add to it that people go, oh, okay, well, I paid $100 more, but look at what I got. And I have a client now that's selling a unique electric razor. It's a new shaver. And I keep telling them, you have to add all those little pieces of plastic that go on it, the trimmer that do different things. They're inexpensive, but it makes it look like you're getting more. And then you could probably get 69 or 79 for the product instead of 49 or 59. And it's not going to cost you much to put that together. And people forget that they always think price instead of value. What am I providing and what else can I do? Even in a subscription business of where I'm providing data or content, there's always something of value you can add to somebody.
Well, and that's a key piece you're touching on there, Phil. And it's interesting, during this publishing process of the book, I had beta readers reading it and giving me early feedback. And one of the pieces I realized was those things we think are obvious, we don't realize that our readers might not know.
Right.
And I thought it was clear that when we're talking about changing our pricing or our product lineup or our subscription tiers or any of this, that we always want to be providing value, but I didn't spell that out.
Right.
And so at no point are we ever saying take advantage of your customers or anything like that. We always want an exchange of value, because at the end of the day, someone's buying from you because they're getting back equal or greater value than what you're charging. And our goal should always be to over deliver on that value.
Right.
So when we add a new product, or in this case, I love this razor idea. You could have the base model, or you could have the premium, the gift package or something else. You can have different tiers and different price points, and those attract different kinds of buyers, right? And have different profit margins built in. So it's great to have that, so long as we are always providing value in what it is that we offer.
Yeah. Yeah. We learned that in the beauty business, and because we could put packages together and add, all those little things, like a carrying case and just, people, they would equate it. They would think that they were getting this great value. Actually, Clinique does it every year, and women line up for it at places like Nordstrom and stuff, where they always come out with this bag every year, this unique bag. It's got a unique design every year around the holiday time. And it's a limited edition thing. And, it's nothing more than a bag with some tchotchkes in it, plus all the Clinique products. And I mean, it doesn't matter what they charge for that. People are still going to flock to it because they want that unique bag, and they've been doing it for so many years, and people collect the bags, and it's turned into a whole thing. So,
yeah.
And I think beauty is a great channel for that whole value equation, right?
Now, what's interesting there too, Phil, is that Clinique isn't saying we're going to discount this and here's a sale and fire sale to get rid of the product. They're putting a value package together. And it's pretty common. I talk to business owners who try discounting or marking their own products down. And they don't realize that that price reduction is taking all the profit off the top and
Oh,
sometimes can run them negative. So you look at this, you're like, well, we'll make up for the losses with volume. And rarely does that ever work. So the inverse of that, of course, is instead of discounting your price lower, increase the value you're offering. Look at what the value add-ons you can include while you maintain that same price point and ideally that same margin.
yeah. I was laughing because we just went through this whole thing about, you know, having, I have a group of Amazon sellers that, I'm involved with, and they all came out of the second Prime Day, and there were discussions about they discounted 25%, their sales went up like 15%, and they spent, this much money. But, look at the volume that was, that we did. And I kept saying, but you were worse off. If you left your pricing the same and just, sold what you sold, you would have been better off. No, 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 no. We went through this whole thing, and that's all I kept thinking in the back of my head was, no, don't worry, we'll make it up in volume, which never happens.
No. Now, if there are side benefits to the sale, for example, if your front end product is really just meant for lead generation and that gets someone to have a transaction
Sure.
with you and then build a relationship, it's okay sometimes to have a lost leader, right? For example, if you're offering a product where someone just pays shipping and handling, right? Or you mail it out for free and you lose money on every single one, but that's what gets them in the door to buy from you and become a subscriber or buy larger quantities, then that can be okay, right? You can go ahead and scale that up so long as you can afford to do so.
Sure.
But that's an important note about like being able to afford to do so. That implies what your cost for acquisition is and what your customer lifetime value is. And many businesses will go, full hog with this, make up for it with volume, not knowing what that customer is worth or what that first transaction will lead to.
Yeah. I hate to use razors again, but Harry's Razors does the same thing every year. They do a $5 deal. It's impossible to pass up. You get a handle, you get a 2 cartridges, and you get a small thing of shave cream. And it's in a beautiful little box. $5 with shipping. They're probably in $7 on the shipping. And so it's, I don't know what the cost of the product is, but let's just take it at retail value of $5. It's a $12 investment, but they know that they're going to make that customer is going to come back and spend $60, $80, $100 because they're going to start buying all the other stuff. But you're 100% right. Once you've got them in the door, now you can nurture them. Now you can email them. Now you can talk to them and you can get them to buy more. They know what their long-term value is. They know what their average sale is. They know all these different things. And the other thing that they found out was when they did the $5 deal, which they still do every year, that people came in, bought the $5 deal, but also bought almost $100 worth of other stuff because they were going to use the $5 deal as a stocking stuffer.
Yes.
So there were tons of benefits, but you're 100% right, and it was for first time customers only. If you're an existing customer, you can't take advantage of it. So, but it's just brilliant because it's so high value that you cannot turn it down. I never turned it down.
I mean, if you look at PayPal, when PayPal first started, for our listeners who remember this, part of their whole deal to grow the whole network effect is when you got someone new on the network, they got $5.
Yeah.
Right. So they knew what they were paying out to get someone new into the network, but they also knew the value of the more people in the network, the more valuable the network is, and the more likely you're going to be to use the platform and so forth. So they knew what customer acquisition cost was, and they could model out the customer lifetime value.
Yeah.
Right. So for, our listeners, think about your business. If you have a lost leader, it can be okay. Just make sure you know your numbers on that.
Absolutely.
We had a business we're working with that did live events and sold educational content, had conferences and all. And simply by making like a few little tweaks, constantly testing, we're able to get it to the point that on average, for every dollar someone spent upfront to attend the event, they spent an additional dollar in add-ons before going to the event. So instead of just selling a course, it changed to let's sell an event, which changed to, well, why don't you sell the course and you get the event ticket, to let's sell the event ticket and you get the free course, to once you buy one, what is the upsell to bring a guest? And so there are all these little tweaks and experiments we put in place to find out how we could continue delivering value during that registration process and increase the amount of that initial transaction.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the guys that do that really well are, oh my God, it's the printing company that's online. I can't remember the name. They've been around forever. They do the custom printing online,
Mhm.
business cards, etc. And then you get your business card, and then as you go through, it's like, do you want to get your mugs? Do you want to get pens? Do you want to get logoed pens, logoed this, logoed that? And by the time you're done, you've get a logoed custom case for your business cards, and then by the time you're done, you've spent twice as much as you would have.
Yeah, it's interesting looking at certain established, older industries who know their numbers really well, like amusement parks, for example, or movie theaters, or any of these, right? They don't make a whole lot of money at the movie theater when you buy a ticket,
Right.
right? You buying a movie ticket establishes you as a customer, and you are now a paying customer walking in the door. All the money they're making is on the concessions, right?
Right.
That popcorn, that Coca-Cola, all those things you're getting there is
Right.
all profit.
Yeah.
But you've now shown that you are a consumer and you are buying, and you're already in so much for that ticket. And the
Yeah.
amusement park's very similar. The numbers on the revenue that comes in from the ticket is not a significant portion of the overall sales that amusement parks get
Right.
from guests. And that industry knows their upsells well, their follow-on sales, all of that so well.
Yeah.
So the
Absolutely.
takeaway for our listeners, by the way, here is if your customers transact with you once and you don't have other opportunities for them to buy during that initial purchase or shortly thereafter, there's a huge opportunity loss there. So be thinking about, like, what additional upsells, add-ons, cross-sells, downsells can I put in place to provide more value to my customers?
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, we've got about 2.5 minutes left. This sort of flew by, I think.
You and I could talk about this stuff for days.
I think so. But that 40 that 50 minutes just flying by. So we've got about 2.5 minutes. Any closing remarks? How can people get in touch with you? Where can they buy the book? The book's available where? On Amazon as well as other places, right?
Yeah, so Your Business Growth Playbook is available on Amazon as well as at most any major bookstore, online, in person, and so forth. You can find the links to buy it in your local market at your stores, as well as additional resources, intro to the book, and all sorts of great stuff. That's all over at yourbusinessgrowthplaybook.com. You'll find that link in the show notes, I'm sure, as well. And what's really important that I want our readers to take away is a story that I touch on in the beginning of the book. And this is around Hercules and the Wagoner. So there's this wagoner with his oxen pulled cart going down the road one day and goes off the road and gets stuck in the rut, literally stuck in a rut. We use as a saying today, but this guy got his wheel stuck in the rut. And so he immediately looks up to the heavens and calls to Hercules, please come down, save me, do something. And Hercules comes down and is like, did you do anything? Did you try leaning into the cart? Did you urge your oxen forward? Like, what have you done to fix this problem? And the wagoner is like, well, I just wanted you to fix this. And Hercules is like, no, come on. And so the wagoner, sure enough, like leans into the back of the cart and urges his oxen forward. And what do you know? Gets himself out of that rut. So if you feel stuck in business or faced by some challenge, wishing and wanting and hoping things will just be different tomorrow is not a strategy.
No.
Taking action and doing something in your business can lead to change. So take action, be an action taker, be an implementer. Don't just listen to this show with Phil. As you hear from guests and as you read books and as you go to conferences and so forth, take notes on what it is you want to actually get done and then actually go implement it and do that. And one of those things you can do is head over to yourbusinessgrowthplaybook.com. You can get the first chapter of the book for free, as well as some other great resources. Take action, implement on your ideas, and get yourself back to the growth you deserve.
Yeah, it's great advice. We'll have a link to the book, and we'll have a couple of other links for Jeremy. I think we have your LinkedIn link in there, and we have the website as well. So thanks for being on. Really great discussion. Good luck with the book. I think it's fantastic. I read it. Got an early release. Thank you very much. But that's a wrap for today's episode of Crunching Your Growth. And a huge thanks to Jeremy for coming back, and more importantly, for turning decades of experience into a real playbook for business owners who've outgrown pure hustle. So whether you're an established business founder who feels like you're pushing harder for less progress, go grab a copy of your Business Growth Playbook. Use it alongside this episode to identify your 3 biggest levers and start working on the business again instead of being trapped in it. As always, if this episode hits home, share it with another entrepreneur who's stuck at a plateau. Subscribe so you don't miss future conversations. Drop a comment with your biggest takeaway from Jeremy's framework. And as always, I'm Phil Masiello, and this is Crunching Your Growth. And remember that it's not about louder hustle, it's about smarter moves. So I will see you next week.